A battle's aftermath. The air on Sereno 7 was thick with the acrid stench of scorched metal and burnt vegetation, remnants of the brutal battle that had raged just hours before. Captain Evelyn Carter trudged through the smoking ruins of the mining settlement, her boots crunching against shattered crystal shards that glimmered faintly in the dim light of the planet's twin moons. Her pulse rifle was slung over her shoulder, and her eyes scanned the eerie landscape, every nerve alert for signs of life or threat. She didn't need to be here. The orders were clear. The settlement was lost, overrun by the alien Durrani forces before the human coalition had managed to drive them back. There was nothing left to salvage, no one left to save. Yet Evelyn couldn't bring herself to leave without combing the area one last time. Something in her gut, a feeling she couldn't explain, urged her to press on. Her wrist communicator crackled. "Captain Carter, you're pushing your luck. The extraction point's a kilometer west. You've got 10 minutes before we leave without you." Evelyn tapped the device. "Understood, Lieutenant. I'll be there." Carter out. She adjusted her path, turning toward the extraction point, but a faint sound stopped her in her tracks. It was barely audible over the distant hum of the cooling battlefield, but there it was again, a low, pained whimper. Evelyn froze, her heart hammering in her chest. She pivoted, scanning the area with sharp, practiced eyes. "Anyone there?" She called out, her voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. There was no response, just the whisper of the wind carrying the acrid scent of destruction. She hesitated for only a moment before following the sound. As she stepped deeper into the ruins, the whimper grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't human. It was something else. Her grip tightened on the pulse rifle as she approached the source. A collapsed metallic structure loomed ahead, its skeletal remains jutting out like broken ribs. Beneath the twisted wreckage, a faint glow pulsed, a soft, otherworldly blue. Evelyn knelt cautiously, pulling back a jagged piece of metal. Her breath caught in her throat. Lying in the wreckage was a figure, a Durrani soldier, female by the look of her slender form and intricate armor. Her iridescent blue skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, and her long silver hair was tangled with debris. A jagged piece of metal jutted from her side, and her breathing was shallow, labored. Evelyn hesitated, every instinct telling her to walk away. The Durrani were the enemy, responsible for untold human casualties in the war. Helping her could be seen as treason, a betrayal of everything Evelyn had fought for. But as she looked at the alien's face, contorted in pain, yet unmistakably vulnerable, something stirred inside her. "Damn it," Evelyn muttered under her breath, slinging her rifle over her back. She reached out tentatively, her hands brushing against the alien's skin. It was cool to the touch, almost unnervingly so. The Durrani flinched at the contact, her eyes fluttering open. Evelyn froze as those eyes, large and luminous, like pools of liquid silver, met hers. The alien's lips moved, but the words were too faint for Evelyn to hear. She leaned closer, catching a single word that sent a shiver down her spine. "Help." Evelyn gritted her teeth, torn between duty and conscience. The Durrani were the enemy. She shouldn't care. And yet, as she looked into those pleading eyes, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. Swallowing hard, she activated her communicator. "Lieutenant, this is Carter. I got a situation." The reply crackled back almost instantly. "What kind of situation, Captain?" "I found a survivor," Evelyn said carefully, glancing down at the alien. "Injured? Human?" Evelyn hesitated. "No." There was a long pause on the other end. "Captain, you know the protocol. Leave it. We're pulling out in 5. "Negative," Evelyn snapped. "I'm not leaving her to die." "Her?" The lieutenant's voice was incredulous. "Captain, you realize what you're saying. This could cost you your command." "Then so be it," Evelyn said firmly. "Carter out." She ended the transmission before the lieutenant could respond. Shoving the communicator back into her pocket, with careful hands, she began to free the alien from the wreckage, mindful of the jagged metal and the oozing silver blood that seeped from her wounds. The alien winced, her breathing growing more ragged with every movement. "It's okay," Evelyn murmured, more to herself than to the alien. "You're going to be okay." Once the alien was free, Evelyn hoisted her into her arms. She was surprisingly light, her frame delicate despite the battle armor she wore. Evelyn began the trek back to her ship, every step weighed down by the knowledge of what she was risking. She didn't know why she was doing this, why she was risking her career, her life, for a being she was supposed to hate. All she knew was that leaving her behind wasn't an option. The alien stirred weakly in her arms, her silvery eyes flickering open once more. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Evelyn looked down at her, her expression resolute. "Because you needed help. That's all the reason I need." The alien's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile before her eyes fluttered shut again. Evelyn quickened her pace, the silhouette of her ship rising on the horizon. She didn't know what would come next, what dangers or consequences awaited her for this choice. But as the ship's hatch hissed open to welcome them inside, Evelyn felt the first stirrings of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this act of compassion could be the start of something bigger than the war that had torn their worlds apart. Enemies in the same space. The hum of the ship's engines filled the cramped med bay of the Aurora as Captain Evelyn Carter secured the alien woman onto the examination table. The vessel's artificial gravity adjusted slightly as she initiated the takeoff sequence remotely, lifting them off the ravaged battlefield of Sereno 7. Outside the reinforced viewport, the smoldering ruins of the war-torn colony shrank beneath them, swallowed by the dark expanse of space. Evelyn had risked everything by bringing an enemy combatant onto her ship, but she hadn't hesitated. Now, however, as she watched the alien's shallow, uneven breathing, doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. "What the hell am I doing?" The Durrani woman, who she now realized was high-ranking based on the intricate insignia on her shattered armor, was still unconscious. Her silvery blood seeped through the field bandages Evelyn had hastily wrapped around her wounds. If she died here, would all of this have been for nothing? Evelyn reached for the med scanner, running a diagnostic sweep over the alien's body. The device beeped in protest. Its database had no detailed medical information on Durrani physiology. Of course, it didn't. Humanity had been at war with them for nearly a decade, and no one had ever stopped to ask how to heal them. She cursed under her breath and did what she could, applying regenerative gel over the deepest wounds and activating the ship's automated med system. The computer hummed as it worked, scanning for anomalies and administering a mild sedative to stabilize the alien's vital signs. A quiet groan made Evelyn glance up. The Durrani's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, Evelyn got a clear look at them, pale silver with streaks of blue shifting like waves beneath the surface. Beautiful, hypnotic, but filled with confusion and pain. The alien woman's gaze darted around the sterile med bay, taking in her surroundings with the sharp awareness of a trained warrior. When her eyes landed on Evelyn, they narrowed. Instinctively, she tried to move, but the pain must have been excruciating because she gasped and fell back against the table, her breathing ragged. Evelyn remained still, hands raised slightly to show she wasn't a threat. "You're safe. You were badly injured. I treated your wounds." The alien's jaw tightened. "Where am I?" Her voice was soft, but laced with underlying strength. "You're aboard my ship, the Aurora." The alien's fingers twitched, likely reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Evelyn had confiscated it before takeoff. She didn't blame her for the reaction. If their roles were reversed, she'd be doing the same thing. A heavy silence settled between them. Then the Durrani's gaze flickered downward, her brows furrowing as she took in the field dressings covering her wounds. "Why?" Evelyn sighed. She had been expecting that question. "Because you were dying," she said simply. The alien's eyes flashed with something unreadable: disbelief, suspicion. "I am your enemy." Evelyn folded her arms. So I've been told. Doesn't mean I was going to leave you to bleed out in the dirt. The Durrani scoffed, a sharp sound that turned into a grimace as pain lanced through her. Humans, always so self-righteous. Evelyn arched a brow. You're welcome, by the way. The alien ignored her, closing her eyes briefly as she adjusted her position on the table. What do you plan to do with me? Evelyn hesitated. That was the real question, wasn't it? She had acted on impulse back on the battlefield, driven by something she couldn't quite explain. But now she had an enemy soldier in her med bay, and she had no idea what came next. I haven't decided yet, she admitted. But I didn't save you just to hand you over to an interrogation squad. So let's start with introductions. I'm Captain Evelyn Carter. The Durrani woman studied her for a long moment, as if searching for deception. Then, finally, she spoke. Commander Kayla Soreth. Evelyn's breath hitched slightly. That name. She had heard it before. Soreth, one of the most feared names in the war. The Soreth family was legendary among the Durrani, a bloodline of warriors and strategists. If Kayla was who Evelyn suspected, then she was not just some soldier. She was the daughter of Supreme General Vorex Soreth, the ruthless architect of the war. Holy hell, I just saved the enemy's most valuable asset. If command found out, Evelyn wouldn't just lose her rank. She'd be branded a traitor. Kayla must have sensed her shift in demeanor, because she smirked weakly. You just realized who I am. Evelyn exhaled slowly, running a hand through her dark hair. You could say that. Kayla tilted her head slightly, her silver eyes watching Evelyn with something akin to curiosity. And yet, you do not regret saving me. Evelyn met her gaze, unflinching. No, I don't. A flicker of something crossed Kayla's face, something softer, more uncertain. But before Evelyn could place it, the ship's alarm blared to life, flooding the room with red warning lights. In Meng vessels, multiple Psi-Gin-HURESDT. Evelyn's stomach clenched. She sprinted to the command console and pulled up the scanners. A squadron of human patrol ships had entered sensor range. They were closing in fast. Damn it. Kayla had pushed herself up onto one elbow, her expression darkening. Your people? Evelyn nodded grimly. And if they find you here, we're both dead. For the first time since she had met the alien woman, Evelyn saw something in Kayla's expression that wasn't hostility or suspicion. It was trust. Then we had better find another way out, Kayla said, her voice steady despite the pain. Evelyn met her gaze, feeling the weight of the impossible situation pressing down on her. An hour ago, they had been enemies. Now, they were in this together. A shared threat. The Aurora's alarm continued to blare, bathing the cockpit in a pulsing red glow as Evelyn Carter scrambled to reroute power to the ship's stealth systems. The approaching human patrol ships were fast, too fast. They must have already scanned the Aurora and detected something suspicious. If they hailed her now, she'd have only seconds to come up with a believable excuse. Behind her, Kayla Soreth had pulled herself into a seated position on the med-bay cot, grimacing as she moved. Her wounds were healing, but not fast enough to prepare her for another fight. Despite that, her warrior instincts were sharp. Her silver eyes darted to the holographic display, taking in the tactical situation in an instant. How long until they reach us? She asked. 2 minutes, maybe less, Evelyn muttered, fingers flying across the controls. Kayla's lips pressed into a thin line. Options. Evelyn exhaled sharply. I could try bluffing my way out of this, say I had a mechanical issue and needed to land for emergency repairs. But they'll scan the ship, and when they find you, it's game over. Kayla leaned forward slightly, wincing. Then we fight. Evelyn shot her a look. Against an entire patrol squad. In a ship barely armed with anything more than an emergency flare launcher. That's suicide. Kayla tilted her head slightly, considering. Not necessarily. Evelyn turned to her, eyes narrowing. You have something in mind. Kayla nodded, her gaze intense. Transmit a coded distress signal. A Durrani signal. Evelyn's brow furrowed. That's insane. Kayla smirked, despite the pain she was in. Is it? If your patrol believes a Durrani ship is nearby, they'll divert their attention, scanning for enemy vessels. That will buy us a few moments of confusion, long enough for us to disappear. Evelyn hesitated. It was a risk. If the patrol suspected a trap, they could call for reinforcements, making escape impossible. But if Kayla was right, this could be their best shot. She swallowed hard. You sure this will work? Kayla's smirk didn't waver. It's worked before. That wasn't exactly reassuring, but Evelyn didn't have time to argue. She turned back to the controls, bringing up the communication system. All right, give me the frequency. Kayla rattled off a sequence of numbers and glyphs that Evelyn didn't recognize, but the ship's universal translator converted them into a code she could input. She hesitated for only a second before hitting transmit. The moment the distress signal was sent, Evelyn switched the ship's power signature to low emissions, making them nearly invisible to standard scans. Now, they waited. Seconds crawled by like hours. The patrol ships, which had been making a direct line for them, suddenly veered off course. Their search pattern shifted, expanding as they scanned for the phantom Durrani ship. Evelyn let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Holy hell, it worked. Kayla merely gave her a knowing look. You sound surprised. Evelyn shook her head, hands still poised over the controls. We're not clear yet. If they don't find anything soon, they'll double back. Kayla nodded. Then we use their own paranoia against them. Evelyn frowned. How? Kayla gestured toward the ship's comm panel. Open an encrypted channel. Let's make them think they intercepted a Durrani transmission. Evelyn hesitated but followed the alien's instructions. Using the same frequency Kayla had provided earlier, she activated the comm system and played a short, garbled loop of distorted audio, enough to sound like a damaged transmission. It didn't take long for the patrol ships to react. Their formation shifted again, moving aggressively toward a new set of coordinates. Coordinates nowhere near the Aurora. Evelyn grinned. They took the bait. Kayla exhaled, her posture relaxing just slightly. Of course they did. Humans react aggressively to perceived threats. It's predictable. Evelyn gave her a dry look. That's supposed to be a compliment. Kayla tilted her head, considering. An observation. Evelyn sighed, shaking her head as she re-engaged the ship's thrusters. Well, either way, we're in the clear. We should get moving before they figure out they've been chasing ghosts. As she guided the Aurora into open space, she stole a glance at Kayla. The alien was still watching her with an unreadable expression, her silver blue eyes reflecting the dim cockpit lights. You didn't have to trust me back there, Evelyn said after a moment. You could have tried to escape, or fight, or... I could have, Kayla interrupted, voice quiet but firm. But I didn't. Evelyn held her gaze. Why? Kayla didn't answer immediately. She looked away, out the viewport where the stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Because you didn't leave me to die when you had every reason to. Evelyn's throat tightened at the quiet admission. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't enemies anymore. The heart's language. The silence between them stretched, heavy, and weighted as the Aurora drifted further from the patrol's search zone. The human ships remained preoccupied with their fabricated Durrani distress signal, and for now, at least, they were safe. Evelyn exhaled, finally allowing herself to unclench her jaw. She had been running on pure adrenaline since she had first found Kayla bleeding out in the ruins of Sereno 7. Now that the immediate danger had passed, a different kind of tension settled in, a tension she wasn't sure she was ready to address. Kayla, too, was quiet, though Evelyn could see that she was studying her. It was unsettling how intense the alien's gaze was, those silver blue eyes reflecting every dim light in the cockpit, making them look almost ethereal. Evelyn cleared her throat and turned back toward the controls, adjusting their course into deep space. "You keep staring at me like that, I'm going to start thinking you're planning to kill me in my sleep," Evelyn muttered, half joking. Kayla arched a brow. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have helped you fool your own people." "Fair point," Evelyn admitted. Silence settled again, this time less tense, more curious. Kayla shifted in her seat, wincing slightly as she adjusted her posture. Her wounds were healing, but the pain was clearly still there. Evelyn found herself reaching for the med scanner before she even thought about it. "Stay still," she murmured, running the device over Kayla's injuries. Kayla didn't protest, but she did watch Evelyn closely, her gaze softer now, almost thoughtful. "You're different from the others," Kayla finally said. Evelyn paused, meeting her eyes. "The others?" Kayla exhaled. "The other humans I've encountered. Soldiers, commanders, killers. They fight with fire in their hearts, but they burn everything in their path, including themselves." Her gaze flickered downward, almost as if she was remembering something painful. "But you're different." Evelyn let out a short, dry laugh. "I still carry a gun. I still follow orders. That doesn't make me any less of a soldier." Kayla studied her for a long moment before speaking. "No, but it makes you human in a way I didn't think was possible." Evelyn frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Kayla hesitated, as if debating how much to say. Then, finally, she exhaled and leaned back against the seat. "My people have always seen humans as reckless, dangerous, emotionally volatile." "Sounds about right," Evelyn muttered. Kayla ignored the sarcasm. "But emotions, your passion, your drive, your unwillingness to surrender, those things make you formidable, unpredictable." She paused. "And strangely compelling." Evelyn blinked. That was not the answer she had been expecting. "Compelling," she repeated, raising an eyebrow. Kayla's lips quirked, the closest thing to a smirk Evelyn had seen on her yet. "Yes, your people act with a kind of intensity that is unusual to us. My kind is logical. We plan. We strategize. We do not act on impulse. We do not feel the way you do." Evelyn scoffed. "Oh, come on. You can't tell me you don't have emotions." Kayla tilted her head. "We have emotions, but we do not let them guide us." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "Then why did you help me back there? Why not just turn me in or kill me the first chance you got?" Kayla hesitated. Her gaze flickered downward, almost as if she was ashamed of something. "Because I felt something I wasn't supposed to feel," she admitted. "Gratitude, trust, curiosity." She looked back up at Evelyn, and for the first time, there was something raw, something vulnerable in her expression. "Because, despite everything, I wanted to." Evelyn's breath caught. Something between them shifted in that moment, something unspoken but undeniable. Kayla was an enemy, a prisoner, the threat to everything Evelyn had sworn to protect. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. All she saw now was Kayla. Not the alien, not the soldier, just Kayla. The ship's soft lighting cast a glow over her iridescent skin, highlighting the silver streaks in her long flowing hair. Her features were sharp but delicate, foreign but strangely beautiful. Evelyn had never seen anything like her before, and yet she couldn't seem to look away. Kayla tilted her head slightly. "You're staring," she murmured. Evelyn swallowed, forcing herself to smirk. "Guess that makes us even." Kayla chuckled softly, a sound that was almost musical. Evelyn had no idea what the hell was happening between them, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to find out. A love that defies war. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken words. The hum of the Aurora's engines was the only sound in the cockpit as the ship drifted through the empty void of space. Outside, the stars burned in the endless black, distant and indifferent to the turmoil unfolding inside the small vessel. Evelyn could still feel the weight of Kayla's gaze on her, a gaze that hours ago had been filled with suspicion, pain, and defiance. Now, though, there was something else in those silver blue eyes, something softer, something hesitant yet unmistakably real. For the first time in her life, Evelyn felt like she was on the edge of something impossible, and she had no idea what to do about it. Kayla was still watching her, her expression unreadable. "You're thinking too much," she said quietly. Evelyn exhaled a short laugh. "That obvious, huh?" Kayla nodded. "Your people do that a lot." Evelyn smirked. "Think?" "No," Kayla murmured. "Doubt." That caught Evelyn off guard. She turned to look at Kayla fully, studying the alien woman as if seeing her for the first time. She was right. Humans doubted. They questioned. They second-guessed themselves at every turn. Even now, after everything they had been through together, Evelyn still questioned whether she had done the right thing by saving Kayla, still wondered if this, whatever this was real or if she was just caught in the emotional high of survival. But when she looked at Kayla, when she really looked at her, she knew. This was real, and it scared the hell out of her. Before she could say anything, the ship's warning system flared to life, the cockpit glowing red with an alert. The screen flickered, displaying incoming vessels. Evelyn's stomach clenched as she recognized the formation. Both human and Durrani warships. Shit. Kayla stiffened beside her. They found us. Evelyn's grip tightened on the controls. Yeah, looks like they're done playing games. The Aurora's communications panel crackled. A voice filtered through, sharp and commanding. "Unidentified vessel. This is Admiral Heston of the Terran Coalition Fleet. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding." Another voice, colder and laced with authority, followed immediately after. "This is Supreme General Vorex Sorith of the Durrani Dominion. Surrender the fugitive immediately." Kayla sucked in a sharp breath. "My father." Evelyn shot her a quick look. "He doesn't sound thrilled." Kayla's jaw tightened. He isn't. The two fleets had come together for one reason: to claim her. Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. She had known this moment would come eventually. She had taken an enemy commander onto her ship, helped her escape, and now she was going to pay the price for it. Unless... She turned to Kayla, her heart racing. "There's only one way we make it out of this alive." Kayla met her gaze, something flickering in her eyes. "You have a plan." Evelyn nodded. "We don't run. We don't fight. We change the game." Kayla frowned. "What do you mean?" Evelyn exhaled sharply. "We surrender." Kayla blinked. "That's your plan." "Not just to one side," Evelyn clarified. "To both of them." Kayla's expression darkened. "That's suicide." "Maybe," Evelyn admitted. "Or maybe it's the only way to end this war." Kayla stared at her, searching her face. "You really believe that?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "I believe that if we do nothing, they'll tear each other apart just to get to you. But if we show them that we aren't enemies anymore, that we chose something different, maybe, just maybe, we can stop this before it gets worse." Kayla hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. Evelyn turned back to the controls and opened the comm channel. She took a deep breath, then spoke. "This is Captain Evelyn Carter of the Aurora. I have Commander Kayla Sorith aboard. We are surrendering, but only under the condition that both factions agree to a ceasefire meeting." The channel was silent for a long moment. Then her admiral's voice cut through. "You are in no position to negotiate, Captain." Kayla straightened beside Evelyn and pressed the transmit button herself. "This is Commander Kayla Sorith of the Durrani Dominion. If you attack this ship, you will be executing the daughter of Supreme General Sorith. I will invoke diplomatic immunity under the pre-war accords." Another long silence. Then her father's voice, cold and sharp. "You would use our laws against us." Kayla inhaled deeply. "I would use reason against you." Another pause. Then, finally, "Very well," the Supreme General said. "We will hear your terms." Evelyn barely suppressed a relieved sigh. She turned to Kayla, her lips twitching into a small smirk. "See, sometimes humans get it right." Kayla chuckled softly, shaking her head. "More often than you think." The comms remained open, but in that moment, all Evelyn could focus on was Kayla sitting beside her, looking at her like she was something worth believing in. Maybe she was. Maybe they were. And maybe, just maybe, this was how the war finally ended.